Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the past week of news in the hardware world. Got a few cool topics for you today. One of them is a rumor, which we try to stay away from, but this one is close enough to the rumored launch and release and announcement dates that we'll talk about it. It is the Intel i9 series, allegedly. We've also got a couple cases to talk about, have some memory, CPU coolers, motherboards, and video cards. Hopefully get all of that in fairly quickly in rapid fire format. Before that, this video is brought to you by Corsair's new Vengeance RGB LED RAM, which ships with custom screened ICs for better overclocking performance and stability. Given that memory is highly relevant for performance with new Ryzen CPUs, now is a good time to do research on high-performance kits. Start with the Vengeance RGB LED kit at the link in the description below. Let's start off with a big news item, Intel and the alleged i9 series. So these are obviously a departure from the i7 is the best nomenclature that Intel has used for a long time now. The i9s are reportedly going to be Skylake X, and then there will be Kaby Lake X processors as well, which have been rumored for some time now. But Skylake X, the big one to talk about is the i9-7920X, and that is a 12-core, 24-thread CPU, of course, on Intel's architecture, which is a bit different from AMD's. And it's also got 44 PCIe lanes. This is an HEDT CPU, so high-end desktop, not meant for gaming. Sort of like where the 1800X is, though it would be reasonable to assume that the 7920X will probably be more expensive than that, but we'll see. It's also got 16.5 megabytes of L3 cache, and then there's the i9-7900X, not the 20, but the 7900X, which will go down to 10 cores and 20 threads. So you lose 2 physical cores and 4 threads with the 7900X or the 7920. Same PCIe lane count, and the cache is a bit different because you lose some cores, so naturally you lose some cache. That goes down to 13.75 megabytes. And again, these are just rumors, but we've got some initial indications of what clock speed might be on the 7900X. And from what we've seen online, it's looking like 3.3 to 4.5 gigahertz boost, depending on which turbo mode you're in, which is dictated by how many cores are boosting simultaneously. And the 7920X doesn't yet have a leaked clock speed, so can't really do too many guesses on that performance. Other rumored Intel CPUs include an i9-7820X, 8 cores and 16 threads on that one, i9-7800X, which is rumored at 6 cores and 12 threads, and then you have your normal Core i7 and Core i5 series refreshes. Those would be the ones that most of us buy if you're in the enthusiast crowd. So the Core i7 and i5 refreshes are the $200 to probably $400 range devices that will compete most immediately with the existing R7 and R5 lineup. Otherwise, the rest is all HEDT stuff. So AMD's got its own CPUs coming out too. Those two will probably go head-to-head in the near future. Let's cover 2 of the new cases that have been discussed this week. One of them is the Lion Li PC011 ROG version of the case. This is the PC011 that we saw at Computex last year, but with the new quote-unquote ROG certified iteration of the same chassis. The biggest changes come by way of silkscreened ROG-inspired design on the front panel and a reshuffling of the internal layout to permit 3 360mm radiators. Aside from that, the PC011 ROG is still a dual-chamber case featuring tempered glass and aluminum side panels with support for up to eATX motherboards and GPUs up to 430mm. CPU coolers fit up to 150, and there are 4 3.5-inch bays, 5 2.5-inch bays, and an included PCIe riser cable. And if you're wondering about the price on that one, it is looking like $320, but it's Lion Li, so that should have been expected. Availability looks like mid-May, which aligns almost perfectly with Computex coming up. We will be there, by the way. So, quick note, if you don't follow or haven't followed our coverage for at least a year, then you might not know that we go to Computex. That's coming up. It is in Taipei, Taiwan. We will be there to cover all the newest stuff, including all kinds of prototypes that may or may not ever make it to market. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's really not more than about 10 days away at this point. Yikes. So we'll be there. Last week we saw Corsair enter the $50 case market with its new Spec 04, following the Spec Alpha previous case. And now it is Cooler Master's turn. So Cooler Master is launching their own $50-ish case, and that is the Cooler Master Masterbox Lite 5. We're hoping to look at this one. We'll see. It may be at Computex. Otherwise, we'll grab a review sample. But this one, the latest version of the Masterbox, uses a translucent glossy front panel, and it's got customizable trim for, at least colors, for the outside of the case and for trim locations on the case. The customizable trim includes 3D printing schematics, so you can grab those from Cooler Master directly. This is part of their Master Blank series, so Master Box, Master Case, whatever, Master Maker, all that stuff fits into the semi-customizable solution from Cooler Master. So that will be accompanied by 3D printable schematics, and other than that, internally it can fit motherboards from mini ITX to full ATX, not too abnormal there. GPUs go up to 400mm, CPU coolers up to 160mm in height, accommodating most coolers on the market. And then there's support for one 120mm radiator in the back of the case, one 240 or 360 up front, and then the storage is supported at one 2.5-inch bay and a combo of two 3.5 or 2.5-inch bays after that. Master Box Lite 5 is looking at availability for May 19th, just before Computex. Should be about $50, but we're going to try and review it, so stick around for that. And even if we don't, it's $50, so it's not a huge risk anyway, but we will try to cover that one. Corsair announced this week the availability of their newest high-end memory modules. According to Corsair, ICs are hand-screened in these modules, which are dubbed the Corsair Dominator Platinum Special Edition Torque DDR4 Kit 3200 MHz, and it ships up to 32 gigabytes for about $400. The ICs are hand screened, so they're theoretically higher quality, better overclocking headroom, and each kit uses a 10-layer PCB with integrated aluminum heat spreaders that have been painted quite a bit. Each stick has a top bar that has the bluing effect that you can see in our photo, and that lends the muscle car aesthetic that Corsair is going for with these kits. Being special edition, each kit is numbered individually, and they are rated to be overclocked at least to 3600 MHz and compatible with the latest X99 and 200 series motherboards. Getting to the CPU cooler section now, we've got three coolers worth announcing from last week, or talking about at least. The first one is the Arctic Freezer 33CO. This is an air cooler. It has a semi-passive, it's a half passive, half active solution for cooling CPUs. So lower TDP than you might get with some other stuff. But the Freezer 33CO uses four 6mm heat pipes. They are copper heat pipes, as always. These ones, Arctic has gone ahead and specified that they're filled with deionized water. How much that matters, I'm not sure. Normally they have some sort of mix of ammonium, ethanol, and distilled water or something like that. They specify these are deionized. We'll try and talk to them and see if there's any actual meaning to that in terms of performance. There's no real way to test it though. They are direct touch copper heat pipes, so they flatten out at the bottom, direct contact with the CPU IHS, and there are 49 total fins, which for some reason is specified in this one. 120mm PWM fan is used for the cooling. That's got an FDB bearing, or FDB I should say, fluid dynamic bearing, and that has an extra oil reservoir in it, which means that hopefully it should last a bit longer as well. The fan, by the way, does not operate if PWM signal is below 40%, so there's your half passive version of this. Basically, if you're under any kind of light workload, idle to web browsing to something like video viewing, then it should be PWM below 40% for the most part. So that's kind of like most of the video cards are these days. Other than that, it spins up to 1350 RPM max. It comes with Arctic's own MX4 thermal compound and compatibility for sockets. AM4 is included, Intel's included, TDP up to 150 watts. So that covers pretty much everything in those two categories, without accounting for extreme overclocks and things like that. Retail looks like about $50 for this one. The next cooler is Fractal Design's Celsius series, so the S24 and S36. We covered these on the channel already. We specifically reviewed the S36, so if you're curious about it, go check there. But basically, these are two new closed-loop coolers. If you missed it, the very, very short of it is that they are Asetek supplied. They're not that different from any other 5th gen Asetek product, except for a few features, which is standard for all of these, really. And the features on this one that stand out are the semi-open loop design, so that would be the G1/4 fittings on the radiator side, so you could actually detach the radiator and, if you needed to for some reason, use it in another loop. There's also a fan hub on the radiator, which we talk about in that content, and the 360 version goes for $120, the 240mm version goes for $110. Ultimately, the performance is not special on these. It is basically the same as every other Asetek made 5th gen product of comparable sizes. So this is one of those, you buy the one that's cheapest and fits the aesthetic you want. These happen to be blackout with no LEDs. If you like that, we've got a review for you to check out. And if you're not sure about it, check the review anyway, because we have some criticisms of these since they were not all that unique for a late Asetek 5th generation product. The last cooler is a Resin Lido CPU cooler. These coolers will be available in 3 variants based on the LED illumination of the fan. They come in white, red, and blue. The cooler uses a black anodized aluminum fin stack fixed to 3 8mm thick heat pipes that feature black nickel plating. The heat pipes are fixed to the fin stack via solderless design, and the 120mm fan is of the sleeve bearing variety, which spins at 800 RPM to 1800 RPM with up to 67 CFM of air movement and a rating by spec anyway of 29 dBA. The heatsink also allows for a push-pull fan setup, and the cooler supports all the expected Intel and AMD sockets, including AM4. Pricing is not yet known on this one. For motherboards this week, Asus has 2 new boards in the Intel lineup 200 series. There's the H270i and B250i mini ITX boards. These should be a bit more affordable in theory than some of the other ITX boards that they offer on the market right now. Both boards offer 2 M2 slots using a PCIe 3.0 x 4 NVMe interface or protocol, and 4 SATA 3 ports. There's support for RST, as you might expect at this point given Optane. On board, dual band 802.11ac Wi-Fi is included, along with a single PCIe x 16 slot with Aura RGB lighting. Can't get away from that this year. The 2 models diverge a bit on SATA configurations, USB connectivity, and RAID options, mostly due to the different chipsets on offer being the B and H series chipsets. For information or specs on the boards, check the official Asus website. They've already got pages for the products. Lots of video card news from the past week as well, but we'll go through these pretty quickly. The first one is Zotac 1080 Ti Arctic Storm card. This includes a water block, and if you've really seen one of these 1080 Ti's with a water block, you've pretty much seen them all. Zotac does not have a price yet. It should be more than $800 going by trends with 1080 Ti's. And it is using a base of 1506 megahertz with a boost preset to 1620, though obviously they all boost to whatever 3.0 dictates anyway. So those numbers are somewhat useless since they're just bottom line validation runs with whatever software may be used, normally Firmark or something like that, or some other burn-in software. So that's the Arctic Storm. Not a whole lot to say about it other than it'll have a water block. It has 0.3mm micro channels, G-quarter, 1/4 fittings, can be adapted to 10mm internal diameter flexible tubing, and that's pretty much it. The next one is the Inno3D single slot 1050 Ti. It's a 1050 Ti and a single slot. So if you have an HCPC that calls for a single slot config, Inno3D is looking at releasing a card for that. It's pretty simple looking. The fan is not that impressive, but if you look at it, it's a pretty skinny fan because it's a single slot cooler. So they don't have a lot to work with. We're probably not going to review that one, but it's something to look out for if you're in the market for a single slot card. And finally, in video card news, there's a new water block for the Sapphire RX 580 Nitro Plus, which is a brand new card, and that comes from an Asia-based company whose name I do not know how to say. It is BYKSKI, so we're going to go with Bike Sky. Water block comes from them, and it is a water block that uses a copper cold plate with an acrylic top, not too different there. It's got nickel plating to prevent galvanic corrosion, also fairly standard, and it is useful for the RX 580 Nitro Plus, which is brand new, one of the only pre-built water cooling solutions, at least for that card. So that one's on the market as well, or will be soon. NVIDIA Volta V100 was discussed at GTC this week. We've got a video talking about it already. If you are not up to speed on Volta and the architecture, the very basics have been revealed to some minimum level of depth, enough to get interested and start diving into things, and then hopefully we'll have white papers soon after now that GTC has concluded. So V100 and the Tesla V100 accelerator were announced this week. $18,000 for one of them. The DGX 1V is 150 grand. It includes a few, and they're really targeted at deep learning, machine learning, things like that. FP16 is 2:1, FP32, 1:1, FP64, 1:2, and they're not meant for us. But eventually Volta will come down to the gaming line, just like GP100 did. Finally, in video cards, the Asus ROG SLI Bridge was announced previously, but finally hits the market this week. So if you had your eye on that one, it should finally become available. It's an ROG-themed SLI bridge. May is the release month. May 12th, it looks like, is when they should hit availability. And the bridges support Aura RGB lighting, resolutions up to 5K, which is actually dictated by the bridge, and all the normal stuff you would get from one of the HB SLI bridges. And a final very quick news announcement was a new display. We normally include one of these per week. This was the VG27275Q from Asus. It's a new display, 27-inch TN panel with a resolution of 1080p at 75 Hertz. We're not going to talk about this a whole lot, but something to look at again if you're in the display market. 1 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, 300 nits brightness, and your standard set of inputs. Price looks like it's going to be around $300. So that's it for this week. As always, you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. gamersnexus.net to follow stuff as we post it live, or store.gamersnexus.net to grab a shirt like these. My thanks to Eric, our writer, for the news and rounding it up for me. You can find more on the site. Subscribe for more in video format. I'll see you all next time. Ten cores and 20 threads, so you lose 2 physical Thors.